Hello, welcome to the Darkness Underneath podcast, which is both a podcast and documentary series about horrific villains, their crimes, and the people and heroes who brought them down. Normally, I don't talk about other podcasts, especially podcasts I like. I kind of find it obnoxious. I'm here to take you out of YouTube if I can with my stories, rather than drawing attention to the fact that it's on YouTube. People work really hard on their podcasts, and Sammy the Bull's got an excellent podcast. Along with Michael Franzese, those are probably the best two mafia podcasts there are. Recently, Sammy the Bull had an episode on the Westies when people were asking him questions, and I'm sure most of the stories were solid. However, when he got to the Paddy Dugan murder, which is the first story, in this rare instance, Sammy didn't have any clue what he was talking about. And no, he's not being dishonest. He actually admits he doesn't know much about this period.
I got a lot of questions about Westies. I had relationships with them in a bunch of different ways. Once we took over from Castellano, I really wasn't that involved with them before that.
He started dealing with the Westies in 1985 when he became underboss. This was in 1975, Paddy Dugan's murder. What he heard was a rumor. But before I continue on to what he got wrong, real quick.
They started off, there was a guy, Mickey Spillane. He was the boss of the Westies.
There were several people who insisted that I was wrong about Mickey Spillane being part of the Westies. The Westies were just a generic term that Joe Coffey gave for the Irish gangs over there. And that included Spillane, even though they were different gangs. So it's kind of nice to hear that Sammy the Bull asserts that Mickey Spillane was also part of the Westies here. Now to continue.
They chopped his head off. And they put it in the refrigerator.
So that's how you know it's Paddy Dugan's murder, because he was the only one who had his head chopped off and Coonan showed it off, and that it had anything to do with the refrigerator. I'll get into the details in a second.
They killed the guy in their club.
No, they didn't kill him in the club. Witnesses last saw him leaving a club, according to Billy Beatty and Mickey Featherstone, and Mickey Featherstone's account is covered in TJ English. Now, while Mickey Featherstone wasn't there, he was in prison at the time. He was about to get out. He immediately confronted Billy Beatty afterwards, who was there. I covered that conversation in Westies 3, and Mickey Featherstone's account of their conversation is consistent with Billy Beatty's testimony. According to Billy Beatty's testimony, he was forced at gunpoint by Coonan and Kaminsky to lure Paddy Dugan by phone back to Paddy Dugan's apartment, which was also Billy Beatty's. They were roommates. Billy Beatty claims he wasn't present, and Jimmy Coonan came down and told Billy Beatty that Paddy Dugan was dead, and as you can see above, Billy Beatty was then told to go clean up the apartment. And that's the last paragraph in the newspaper there, quoting Billy Beatty's testimony. He's told to go clean up the blood.
And one of the guys, his niece came to see him.
No, Sammy, this is where you get totally confused on this. Again, you heard a rumor.
So he tells his niece, do me a favor, go in the refrigerator and get me a can of beer. The kid goes, she's a young girl, and opens up the door, and there's a head.
His niece was Alberta Sachs. She never went over to that apartment, which was Paddy Dugan's apartment, 4 buildings over. She was in bed. She was only 14. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning. He came and asked for some kitchen knives by hopping over the buildings. Came down, asked for kitchen knives. She gave them kitchen knives. That's when he went back, dismembered Paddy's corpse. It's when they went down and showed the head off. And an hour later, he came back. And as you can see above, both in TJ English and in newspaper accounts, including both the Associated Press and the New York Times, dating to the trials back in the late 80s, they all say the same thing. And TJ English is an excellent true crime writer. We're not talking Philip Carlo here. She saw the head once. She was horrified. It was in a bag. Went to bed. And she did not see the head again. They took it down to an incinerator in the basement of her apartment. And those get over 1,000 degrees. What he's confusing, which was in Billy's testimony and in the Westies and in Paddy Whacked, is that the next day Billy Beatty was told to go upstairs and get a carton of milk, that they needed this milk. And when he checked in it, Paddy Dugan's penis and balls were in it, which horrified and scared him. And they took that, showed it off to a bunch of laughing Westies, gave it back to him and told him to get rid of it, at which point he flushed it.
And they put it in the
They
refrigerator.
put his dick and balls in the refrigerator, correct.
But they were a little weird.
Yeah, cutting people's testicles off and putting it in a refrigerator and parading around with a head is weird. I'd go as far as to say sociopathic, demented. Yeah, but I'll go with weird too.
This is how goofy they were.
Oh, come on, Sammy. I never thought of you as the nice guy, too polite to say what he's thinking. They were degenerate, sociopathic, junky pieces of shit. They make you and John look like Mother Goose and Mother Teresa. I can believe that Mickey Featherstone changed and became a better person. I can believe that Bokum had a good side, and Billy Beatty wasn't a bad person. But those guys who were passing around Paddy Dugan's balls and laughing about it, well, I think it's fair to say they were worse than goofy.
But they were mostly on drugs, drinking.
Which is why you're telling the wrong story. The night that Paddy Dugan was murdered, there were a bunch of people in Coonan's bar, a bunch of Westies, and they heard, and they were doing coke, heroin, and speedballs and drunk, and they all started talking amongst each other and celebrating. So imagine telephone, except imagine telephone from addicts high on coke, heroin, and drunk. And the moral we can all take away from this is, always fact check your sources, especially if they originally came from a bunch of junkies talking to other junkies while confabulating and high. And with that, if you liked the video, hit like. If you didn't, okay, whatever, hit dislike. And until next time, goodbye.